Yeah, so hi all. Let's wait for 5 minutes and Kent will join us. And if you have guys any doubt or if you have any question, please add your question in the chat. So if we have the time, then I will try to ask from the Kent. So mostly he will join at 9:30. So after 4 minutes, he will join us. Yeah. So do you guys know about the remix? So it's a new framework which is made by Ryan. Okay. So it's a remix run. So uh, if you are interested, you can go through this document and their tutorials. So it's a new framework so which help us to write the makes the web application, and you can even write the background like the database. It's a full stack application you can make. Yeah, I think so he will join us after 3 minutes. So they have created their own documents and properly they have properly explained everything related to remix. The best part which I like about the remix is web API. So we have to use the default web APIs which remix has provided us, sorry, the browser which we have provided us, and you can go through the MDN for that. So if you would like to fetch the data from the backend, so I think, yeah, Kent has joined, guys. Yeah, hi Kent. Hello. Hello Kent. You are not audible to me. Could you please check your mic?
Right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I'm able to hear
There we
you.
go.
Cool.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm very glad to you here, and this is my first YouTube live stream, and I'm
Cool,
super
cool.
excited. Yeah, I'm super excited. Uh, so, shall we start, or wait for 1 minute so people will join? Actually, it's 9:30.
Um, yeah, you could start. I'm fine either way.
Let's wait for 1 more minute. I just recently tweeted. I think you have also retweeted, and people will
Hmm.
start joining. And currently, only 5 people have joined. Otherwise, they can also see the recording.
Hmm.
And I found this restream tool, which is very easy. Like what I feel to restream and collaboration on the YouTube.
Cool. Yeah, sweet.
Okay, uh, I think we can start.
All right, let's do it.
Cool. Yeah. So hi all. I have an awesome special guest, Kensi Dodd, and I am a huge fan of Kent. So today we will discuss about the remix and couple of question. And if guys you have any question, please add in the chat. So we will try to cover it. Yeah. So, Kent, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Kent C. Dodds. I live in Utah in the United States with my wife and 4 children and 1 dog. And I have been doing software since, I guess, before I graduated from BYU. I was doing software on the side. So somewhere around like 7 or 8 years, I've been developing software. And for the bulk of that time, it's been JavaScript and TypeScript now, of course. And I worked at a couple companies, eventually landed at PayPal for a couple of years, and then went to full-time educator on my own. And then just in November, I joined Remix because I rebuilt my website in Remix and I loved it so much that I didn't want to do anything else. And so I joined the Remix team back in November. And so now my job is the developer experience of Remix. A lot of that has to do with education and documentation and speaking to folks like you.
Cool. Okay. So, yeah. So, thanks, Kent. So, the format of this stream is Kent will give us the remix tour, and then I will ask a couple of questions to Kent. So, Kent, yeah, could you please give us the remix tour? If you want,
Yes.
you can share your screen. Yeah.
Yes, let me do that. Here's actually 1 second. Forgot to close a couple things, distractions. I don't like having distractions. Okay, so we go to remix.run, and so you can follow along at home if you want. If you go to remix.run, and let me share this. Here we go. And, whoops, I think I just
Yeah.
busted something. There we
Yeah.
go.
Definitely.
Okay, cool. So this is my slides for my intro to Remix talk. It's the Remix Run website because Ryan did a fabulous job with the designer on this site. So it works out really nicely for what I try to do with it. So we're gonna skip a couple things. We're gonna start right here. Actually, you know what? Let me first talk about a couple of things that are up here. So Remix is a web framework with laser focus on web fundamentals and modern UX. And that's like everything that drives the decisions of Remix is how does this help improve the user experience and in a measurable way. And so that's why recently the last couple of blog posts that we have are one about React server components and Remix. That's a common question that we get. The answer is server components aren't anywhere near ready, and if we were to implement them into Remix right now, they would make the user experience worse. So we are not even close to being willing to put time into that because it's not going to make the user experience better. And then the Remix and Next comparison blog post that we had was really focused on comparing the user experience between these two frameworks with the example that Next put together. And then we also talk about the developer experience because it's subjective, but we do feel like the developer experience of Remix is better as well. So if anybody has questions about those two things, there you go. You can go take a look at the blog post. But everything that we're thinking about is how does this improve the user experience? And if we want to improve the developer experience, that's great, but not at the expense of the user experience. So that's a huge focus for us. And yeah, it's a web framework. So, and it's full stack. It crosses the network chasm. And so we're doing server rendering, and we have components on the front end that interact directly with the back end. And this is a route module. We'll explore this code a little bit more later. But yeah, we've got a loader and action run on the server, and then our default export is the component that we want to have rendered for this route, and that runs on both the server and for server rendering, and on the client for rehydration. And now all of a sudden you're a spa or whatever you want to call that. So okay, so let's talk about why Remix exists. First of all, when the web was created, the idea was the browser would go talk to a server, the server would generate some HTML, send it back, and because the request could have some information on it, like a cookie, then the server could generate dynamic HTML based on who the user was and other information about the world, like database information and stuff. So the problem with this was that the loading state was really bad. You would just see a white screen for an extended period of time, especially if you were going all the way from Dubai to Chicago. That is a long distance for those electrons to travel, or however those zeros and ones to travel. And so that resulted in a really slow performance for not only the initial page load, but as the user is making mutations and loading new data and everything. And because of this, if we're just let's just focus on the initial page load for now. Because of this, the loading state for loading your app was really, really bad. So like all that the browser could do was show a white screen, and then sometimes it would show a little indicator down here that said what resource we're waiting for, and it'll have a loader indication on the favicon. But that was pretty much it. And so we did a couple of things to try and improve that performance. For one, we found out really quick that with static files, you don't need a server to generate that HTML or those static files like CSS and images and JavaScript and that sort of thing. So for those static things that don't need to be unique for every user, we can actually copy paste them on servers all over the world, just everywhere. Copy paste those. And then, and then the users don't have to go all the way around the world to get those files. They can just go to a server that's really close to them. That's called a CDN. And then we thought about, okay, so we've still got this loading screen to wait for the HTML. Maybe there's a way that we could do the same thing with our HTML that we did to our static files. And yes, there is. We can just give them a static file that has a spinner. And so that document request is finished really quickly. And so then we can at least show them, hey, we are responding to your request. Just hold on while we go get some code and some data and stuff. Another thing that we found out was that the user was left with this spinner for a long time because we were requesting so much JavaScript. And so we decided, okay, well, the user doesn't need the settings page when they're going to the login screen, so maybe we could just have the JavaScript show up or be split up into little pieces so that they don't need code that they're not going to use right away. And so that's called chunking or lazy or code splitting. So we lazy load the chunks as the user is using the app, thus speeding up that initial time to the first render. And so that helps. And another thing that we did more as a developer experience sort of thing is we found it was really difficult to know all of the data you needed to have up front. And so we split up our data requirements across all of the different components that we're rendering so that the component that needs the data is the one that fetches the data. And this made maintenance of data requests a lot easier, just drastically improved things and indirectly improved user experience because we were able to ship faster with fewer bugs. And so unfortunately, this caused a really big problem for user experience in the in retrospect, because when you are splitting up your code chunks and you're not server rendering, but you're sending a shell of your actual application without any data, because it can't be dynamic because you're copy pasting this file. So when you've got all of these things, and then of course you have to have the code for the component before you can go and get the data, because that code is responsible for getting its own data. Well, when you have all those things combined, what you're left with is a really bad user experience that we've all had before on our banking websites or the power company or like these different websites that may have been updated in the last 6 years or so, but have like really slow backends or something that leads to this sort of experience they're like 100% served by they're dynamic data. Like you can't really do a whole lot with static generation. And so you end up with a bunch of spinners, and that spinner pops into place once you load that first JavaScript bundle. Now you know that, oh, okay, so I have React and I could render this, but now I have to go fetch this other thing, because now that I have my router, I know at least one of the routes that I need to go get. And now I also need to go get the data for this. And so you end up with this waterfall effect where things are just bouncing everywhere as the user is loading the page. It's not a good experience at all. And I can show you this for a company that has so much money and they have a serious problem with this on one of their number one products. And the number one product is YouTube. You see how this bounces around, and I'm not even slowing things down. Look at that. Boom, 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 boom. It has at least 3 or 4 different content layout shifts. This is not a good experience. And to take things further, it does not work, or it takes a really long time if you're on a slow network. So if we're loading this, we're on a really slow 3G network, or also we could be around the world, far away from YouTube, whatever. But first we start with this loading screen that is totally useless, completely, entirely useless. And what's happening right now is we're downloading this desktop Polymer JavaScript file that is over a megabyte in size. It is enormous. This is what has happened to our world. We download over a megabyte of JavaScript, and that's compressed. That is gzipped size. It's actually really crazy. And then when it does finally load and it can render something, it's still, look at this. I'm typing search commands and I'm hitting enter and nothing's happening. And the reason for that is because after that desktop Polymer is loaded, now they know that they need to go load some other JavaScript so they can actually make this thing work. So I'm not sure how they architected things, but they did it in such a way that once the search bar finally shows up, it doesn't actually work until some additional JavaScript logic is loaded. This is not a good thing. Bad user experience, not good at all. And I can't believe it that it's on youtube.com. This is an enormous site, like one of the number one sites on the web today. And so like part of me feels bad for calling out a specific site, but the other part of me feels like it should be okay to call out a site like youtube.com, which has like an outrageous amount of budget. And if they can't get it right, then like what's left for the rest of us? So this is bad, and this is the world that we live in now, because we decided to do everything on the client. And again, we didn't just invent these problems. We decided, hey, let's make it so that users don't have to wait for this white screen for so long. Well, the way that we solved things loading a little bit faster is we said, okay, let's copy paste everything onto a CDN. Well, while we've been doing all of that work, the infrastructure folks have been working really hard on solving this problem too. And what they said is, how about instead of just copy pasting static files, you can copy paste dynamic files that can actually run on the CDN. And so we'll take your dynamic JavaScript and we'll put it all over the place. We'll take a note from the serverless book and we'll say, hey, yeah, we also give you a mechanism for having a function, but that will not run in a single region like it does right now with Lambda and Netlify and Vercel, but it actually runs on all of our regions. And the user just gets to the one that's closest to them, will run your function, and now your server is effectively everywhere. What you end up with when you're doing something like that is now all of a sudden it doesn't take a super long time for the user to get your HTML and your like dynamically generated HTML, and it actually can take like 250 milliseconds or less. Very often, a lot less. For example, my site is running on fly.io, which is a distributed infrastructure company. And so I only just have my site running in 6 regions, but they have like over 30, I think. Dino Deploy also has, I think, 30 regions. Cloudflare Workers or Cloudflare Pages, whichever flavor you decide to use, they have 250 regions all over the world. Fastly has their thing. AWS Lambda at Edge is another thing. There's just tons of regions that you can put these servers all over the world. In my case, this is a full node server. Cloudflare Workers and Fastly and AWS Lambda at Edge are like not node environments, but like kind of a constrained environment that you can still run Remix apps in. But what's really cool about this is because of being able to render on the server, I can do some really awesome stuff. Like you'll notice that I am logged in right here. And so I can have user-specific data. Another thing is this number is also dynamic. So the number of people who have read my blog posts, I recently jumped over 100,000 since I launched this in October. The number of blog posts, the number of times it's been read, and then also blog recommendations. These are all completely dynamic and specific to me. So every time I refresh, I'm going to get a different set of blog posts every time. And so like I cannot cache this from an HTTP cache standpoint. I can't put this in a CDN because it's all dynamic to every single user. And so the solution is let's just push the server really close to the user and push the data really close to the user, and then make it really fast on the server so that it doesn't take long to get to the user. And you end up with just a stellar experience, a stellar loading experience, no like things popping in place. And then on top of that, Remix also understands how the web works. And so if YouTube had been using Remix, they wouldn't have this problem with their search. It would work as soon as the HTML showed up. And so yeah, I just like somebody get me to talk to somebody at YouTube and I can show them their problems and show them how Remix solves them. So that's and like that's an important thing. I kind of mentioned that offhand, but as soon as the HTML shows up on like in the browser, you've got forms there around all of your mutations. So your mutations will work. You don't have to wait for the JavaScript to show up. And that's what happens when you have a full stack web framework that understands the web and uses the web platform. So anyway, I don't know, Anuj, if you wanted to like ask questions as we go through, but this is a good stopping point for me. And then like I've got a bunch of other things after this, but I'll take a quick break from talking.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, good example. Like you have given the YouTube example, and I think they will hire you or give you some offer so that you can improve the user experience. So, what is your
That would be great.
suggestion to YouTube team so that they can improve, or if they watch this video or any other video you have explained? So, what is your suggestion for the YouTube? How they can improve?
Yeah, so server render your app for one. Make your app understand or make it so that mutations and search queries will work before JavaScript loads. Like there's no reason that this should not be a form that actually like does a regular like a regular search, right? So what happens when they finally end up loading this is they render that search input and they immediately add prevent default to it. So if you do a Studio C search, they're preventing default and doing a manual navigation. That's fine because the JavaScript is loaded, and so like you can do better than the default behavior. But if your JavaScript hasn't actually finished where it will actually work, then don't prevent default, because you can just like the default behavior is what this does. So you're just preventing the default for no reason at all. They could actually fix that particular bug. Well, I mean, I don't know the implementation. It's always more complicated, but I feel like that thing should just be a matter of whatever code you have on the page after this search input renders that says event prevent default, just don't do that and wait to do the prevent default until the JavaScript loads that actually will do the navigation. That's all. That's all they need to change for that particular bug. But again, that doesn't solve the things popping into place as you're loading. That is not, yeah, that is not a good experience. So that would be another thing.
I think they
Just
can.
use Remix, and then you don't have to think
Yeah,
about it.
you can tweet about this. Maybe they can improve this thing.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah, yeah. So my next question is, as a developer or open source contributor, okay, so how I can see the future of the remix?
Yeah, so we one of our core values is we don't want to talk about things we haven't shipped yet. And so because like some companies will talk all about the cool things that are going to happen in the future. or some frameworks will do that. We've been waiting for suspense for years, and it's very frustrating. And so, and then also, like if we decide to cancel or like that we investigated something is not a good idea. We don't want to hype up something and get all the benefits of hyping something that never actually happens. And so, yeah, we don't have a public roadmap for that reason. Um, but yeah, like if you want to keep up with what we're actively working on, then you could watch the Remix repo on GitHub, and we're very public about the work we're actively doing. So you can just see what pull requests are being made and stuff. That'll give you an idea.
Yeah, so that the best part which I like about the remix is you go for the open source or open source. Previously
Yeah,
it was the paid, but I think now the open source it's now public, and everybody can use it, contribute it, and that's a good thing,
yeah.
which I like it. And next question is, like, as I am a new in remix, okay, so how can I learn remix, and do you suggest any resources for that?
Yeah, so the best way to learn Remix is to go to remix.run and go to docs, and then you can start with either the quick start or the jokes app, either of those tutorials. The quick start is this developer blog. You could go through this in like a half hour or so. It yeah, and then the jokes app is a much bigger, more comprehensive tutorial that I actually did a live stream a few weeks back, and you can follow along with me going through that live stream and go through the whole Remix jokes app tutorial. And that goes through database and mutations, authentication, um, just even optimistic UI, so some advanced concepts as well, which don't look so advanced when you're using Remix. It looks like, sure, why wouldn't I do that? So yeah, that would probably be the best thing to do.
Cool. So, like, if the people know about the remix or basic knowledge, then they can quickly go the I think your developer, and if they want detailed information, how to fetch the data, how to get the data, then they can jokes app. I think they can follow
Yeah.
that. Cool. So my next question is, like, what is the best practice we should follow while developing the web application as a web developer? So what do you suggest to the web developers? What like what is the best practice they should follow? Like if they have some new app come, okay, so how they should build and what are the things they should care?
Well, without some like, I know that you want kind of a generic answer, so I'll just say without a specific example, it's hard to say more than just use Remix, and you'll build it faster and build it better than anything else that I can think of. So, yeah, the best practice is use Remix.
Yeah, remix and create sorry, you your testing library to test the thing you for
Yeah,
unit testing. Yeah,
yeah,
React testing library, which we lot of people are using. Even I am using a lot in my projects.
cool. Yeah, that's
Even
awesome.
we don't submit our code before writing the unit test. There's a best practice we follow.
Yeah, yep, that's a good one.
Cool. So, okay. So my next question is, like, company uses mostly the client side rendering just because of they need less resources and it will cost less. But if they go with the server side rendering, then it will increase the cost because every request will come from the server, and then the like it then they need the high resources to for that. So, like, for that, how they can handle and what they should follow?
Yeah, so for one, the modern infrastructure is really affordable. And so you can use Cloudflare Workers and you get a million requests for 15 cents. That's basically nothing. You can't even buy a sucker for that. It's amazing what you can do with modern infrastructure. And so and when you're using a service like that, then you don't really think about scaling. They have your whatever scale you need, they have it. So that is one thing to keep in mind. The other thing is, if you are okay with static responses to your users, you can totally do that with Remix. There's nothing stopping you from doing all of the things that you do with other frameworks for static. You can dynamically load stuff and give users the really bad experience that we're talking about here. If you really want to, you can do that. There's nothing stopping you from being able to do that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it, but yeah, you can do that with Remix. In addition, if it really is just static and you don't have any dynamic stuff, like you're talking about an about page, the terms of service, stuff that doesn't have, like maybe you don't even have the user's avatar in the upper right corner. Maybe it's your marketing page or something. If that's the case, then you stick a CDN in front of your origin server and set the right cache headers, which Remix makes very easy. And now all of a sudden, it actually doesn't really matter that much. Like it's not going to be hitting your origin server very often at all. And so yeah, you'll with that scenario, if you really do just have static data or a static page, and you can cache it on with HTTP headers, then you can take your origin server that gets hundreds of thousands or millions of requests a day down to like one request a month, which is basically like a rebuild. So your origin server turns into your build server, which can handle any request at any time. So that's what I would say about that.
Okay, like it's up to the company or how they follow the rules. But if they follow the server side rendering, it's a very good fast application, good user experience. They will find.
Yeah, well, and the cool thing with Remix is that you can have that and not have to completely change your the way that you build your app. So that's one thing that we talk about in this blog about Remix versus Next. And we've actually got 2 questions on YouTube about this, even though I mentioned this at the start. I'm guessing these people
Yeah,
showed up after I mentioned
yeah.
this.
The
But,
people are asking the same
so
question.
yeah, go look at this at Remix versus Next. But one of the things that we mentioned in here is that, like, first of all, our SSR is just as fast as their SSG, which should not be the case. Like, they need to fix a couple of things so that their SSG is faster, because like it doesn't make any sense that ours would be faster. Like, look, Remix rewrite. Well, that's not SSR actually. that's the other thing I'm going to talk about. But even for their static site generation, we are faster, which is weird. But the problem is that as soon as you decide you want to have some dynamic data on the page, you have to, if you started with SSG, you have to completely re-architect your solution so that it works with SSR. So you do have the options, but they are like completely redo the way that you're doing things to switch from SSG to SSR. And that is not a great thing, not a great experience. And with Next.js in particular, the way that they recommend and the way they built their site is not to do SSR, but they will do SSG with dynamic data loading for the page, because they care so much about the time to first byte metric, which is not what you should care about. You should care about the user experience, the full experience that the user is having, and time to first byte is one of the many parts of that user experience. And like you can see clearly in this comparison, that's the case. So so the cool thing with Remix is that you have just one mechanism for getting stuff onto the page. Of course, like you can do non-server rendered stuff. Like you can go out of your way to do something differently if you need to. But we do SSR. And if you want the benefits of something like SSG, you stick a CDN in front of it. And now you basically have SSG without having to re-architect your entire solution. So that's an important thing to call out to.
Cool. So I think, yeah. So Kent has explained the difference between Remix and Next.js, and so Remix is super fast than Next.js. So I think you can also go through the blog and you can check the details about that. Yeah. So next question is, I really like framework Next.js and Remix, but I wonder what is the deal about server side rendering beside better SEO?
Yeah, that's just right here. Here it is. This is why server-side rendering is awesome. Because you don't have these loading states. Like that's basically the first half of everything that we were talking about. When I brought up YouTube, they're doing client-side rendering. That loading experience is no good. It's not good. Go to my site and then boom, it's all there.
It's all
Nothing's popping into place or anything. Yeah, you're much better off server rendering. So long as you can make it fast, which we can, then there's no reason to do client rendering. It's a much better experience to do server rendering.
cool. So there is one more question: is Remix faster than Astro?
I haven't done any metrics or comparisons, so I can't say definitively like I can with with our next comparison. It's going to be like I don't know. Build a comparison and find out for yourself, I guess. The like part of the like part of the value proposition of Remix is that it's a full framework, whereas like I didn't get to do my whole spiel. Like we've got a bunch of stuff in here that we can talk about. Like mutations is a huge thing that most frameworks never even think about, and it's built into Remix. It has a lot of really great user experience implications. I don't know of any other frameworks that have this level of connection between the client and the server that lead to really awesome developer productivity and a great user experience. So whether it's faster or not, I don't. I can't say objectively because there's no comparison that's like a fair comparison between the two. But I can say that Remix will make you really, really productive. And it also is fast enough as well. So like even if Astro were a tiny bit faster, I mean, you also have to factor in developer productivity. I should also mention specific numbers. So like we have seen a Remix app server render and respond with the HTML in 20 milliseconds on Cloudflare workers. So, I mean, 20 milliseconds, folks. Like, if yours can do 10 milliseconds, great job. You're twice as fast as Remix. I do not care when we are that fast. So yeah, I would be really surprised if your framework, which is just marginally faster than Remix, would be better for the user in any case, because Remix is a full framework. And
Yes,
so it's crazy fast. Maybe yours is faster, but we're going to be more productive anyway. So
that's a good thing. Like a Remix, what the mutation part, and you use the forms default form. Like that's a very good thing, which I like it. Mutation and loader and actions means we can do everything in the components like backend data, fetching the data, and whatever you want that data you can. And the context you are already manage, just use the hooks and you will quickly do
yeah,
optimize
yeah,
UI. That's a good thing.
yeah. It's really awesome.
Means you can write, if suppose if you have to create a create sign up form, so you can do it within 1 hour or 30 seconds, 30 minutes, sorry.
Yeah, it's true.
If the backend is ready.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like even if you don't have any backend APIs, you're writing backend code so you can talk directly to your server or to your database and stuff. Like
Yes.
the level of productivity that you get with Remix is amazing. I remember people would always talk about how productive they were with different frameworks, and that's only half of the story. I came from the front end world, where yeah, I'm super productive with my front end, provided that my back end is ready, then I can build a full experience. But and then on the back end side, they're like, yeah, I'm super productive with my back end, but they drop you off of this network cliff where it's like we sent some HTML, so we're full stack, or we sent the fetch request. Good luck. Like Remix is the first real framework that I would call center stack, where we start in the middle with a solid bridge on the hardest part of building an app, that communication between the backend and server. Redux exists because of this problem. The entire Flux architecture exists because it's hard to keep the front end and the back end in sync. And Remix makes that trivial. It's like how the framework works. So yeah, when we're talking about productivity, Remix has nailed it.
Yes. Cool. And my next question is like currently we can use the remix with the React. Okay. So
Mhm.
is there any future plan to use like Vue or with Angular or some other UI library? Do we have any plan for this?
Yeah, so right now we are actually actively working on making our React router and things framework agnostic. That is not exactly a super high priority for us, but it is a priority nonetheless. And so we do have somebody working on that right now for us. And eventually, when that's done, it will actually be quite uh, really exciting because then you can just build adapters for different frameworks and it should work. There may be some necessary code changes in Remix, possibly, but yeah. Anyway, that we are looking into that, and 100% it will be possible. And in fact, somebody could probably make a fork of Remix and make it work and show us like, hey, look, this is Vue with Remix. Remux if they want to, I guess. But yeah, if that's you and that gets you excited, that I would be I would recommend not planning on that becoming its own big thing, but instead just using it as a way to show us how, because that is something we have planned in the future. So yeah, other frameworks right now though, like I know that people are really excited about Svelte and Vue and all these other and Angular, these other frameworks. But if you look at the data that we have about framework usage, React is almost 3 times as used as the other ones all combined. Period. That's 3 times, almost 3 times as used as all of the other ones combined. That is an enormous lead on popularity. And so um, we are interested in supporting other frameworks. We want to detach ourselves from React so that people don't have to feel like they have to use React to be able to benefit from Remix. But that's why it's not an enormous priority for us, because React is just so outrageously widely used.
Yes. Even like some company only follow the Angular. Like they, in all their project, they use the Angular. In some company, they always follow the React. In my previous organization, mostly like people follow the Angular. So every app will make in Angular. In my new
Hmm.
company, like current company, we use the React Redux, Redux toolkit. This. Um,
Hmm.
so it's mostly also the means company wide also.
Yeah. Yep. But there are, like I said, just so many more React users. So
Yes.
and all three of us well, 6 of us who work at Remix. We all really like React, and so that's why we started with that. But yep, there's
Yes.
a path forward for other frameworks.
Cool. And my next question is related to the like you have the Epic React. So do you have any plan for Epic Remix?
Yeah, if you go to epicremix.dev right now, that will actually
Yes.
take you to my blog post where I announced that I'm going to be working at Remix. And basically, I say that I am going to build Epic Remix as a free thing for everybody. I'm not sure if it probably won't be called Epic Remix. I don't know, maybe it will. But yeah, this is planned, and it's going to be free because I work at Remix now. This is my job.
That's
And so uh, yeah, so look forward to that. Right now, the best that you have for right now is, like I showed, the jokes deep dive. And
yes.
this live stream, like, this is legit. Like, this is you can go through this as a workshop. I actually made a Remix fundamentals workshop um, 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 material. What repo? Um, and so you can go through this and follow along in my live stream and basically get a free workshop from me right now. Um, so that's what I would suggest folks do.
Yeah,
go
I
through that.
followed this, and I also make a one project like remix joke, and I learned a lot of things like how we can fetch the data from the DB, how we can update it, and how we can manage the session. These things I learned
Mhm.
from this.
Yeah, and we're definitely planning on doing a lot more in this space from an education standpoint. Also, doing a lot more to create a bunch of examples. We're going to have, see, we've got this big set of examples. We're going to be doing even more in the future. That's like the examples directory in Next. There's going to be a silly number of examples in here. I've got a lot of pull requests to this directory for a bunch more examples using it with other frameworks and stuff. And yeah, in the um, yeah, there's a lot of stuff. And actually, another thing is Ryan is working on a series called Remix Singles. Hey, I'm Ryan. And he's like producing a bunch of these recently, showing people how to do various things with Remix. He's also going to be doing everything about X, and so like everything about forms, everything about routing, like so a bunch of videos on how to get going with Remix. So yeah, education is going to be a big part of Remix adoption, and so it's a priority for us.
Yes. And one more thing is like as a developer, I would like to know how the remix work under the hood, like how you manage the state, how you manage the context, and how you're fetching the data. So like it would be good if you make any live streaming or some tutorials on this, how the remix work under the hood. It would be very helpful. It will help us on the contribution part also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely plan on doing stuff like that. We'll probably we have a lot of things to do, and so we have to prioritize things. And right now, the biggest priority is getting people who want to try and play around with Remix and experiment with building their apps with Remix. We want to make them successful, and understanding how things work under the hood is only one part of that, and not the most important part. So that's why we're not planning on doing that anytime soon.
Cool, cool.
But we'll get there eventually. We just have a lot to do.
Even I was planning to ping to Ryan on the Discord channel because we have the Remix India meetup, and I was I was planning, but then we got the two subscribe like two speaker for this
Oh,
month
sweet.
for Fab, and next for March I will try to Ryan if he will be ready.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the next one is like, what is your suggestion for the students who just started their career as a web developer or the front end world? Do you have any suggestion
Yeah.
for the students?
Sorry, what was the last thing you said?
Yeah, actually, what is your suggestion for the students who just started their career as a front end developer or as a developer, either front end or back end?
Yeah, so I would suggest that you stay motivated. That's probably the hardest part as you're getting into software. It can be really frustrating and overwhelming because there's just so much to know, and you don't know what you want to focus on either, and so it can feel really difficult to focus and not get overwhelmed, and so you lose motivation very easily. So one thing that I like to do is try to um, the most people I think are better off skipping fundamentals and just getting to building something that helps them in their lives or that excites them, gets them interested, and keeps their interest. And so, yeah, I wouldn't bother with the fundamentals when you're just getting started. The fundamentals are how you level up. So you're building stuff and you don't know how it works, but it works, and you're ready uh, to do better. Yeah, you level up by going back through the fundamentals. Um, yeah, another thing I would say is actually, you know what? I do have a blog post about this.
Yeah, yeah.
That is there are two actually. Getting started. Nope, that is not it. What is it? What did I call that? Um, start. It's start something. Yeah, how to get started with programming.
Program.
is a good one. And then experience. Yeah, how to get experience as a software engineer. So those 2 blog posts would probably be helpful for anybody wanting some of my thoughts on that too.
Cool. Uh, so my next question is like there are a lot of library come in the front end world, right? So like React query, and then the Redux toolkit also come with the RTK query, and now Remix, now React, and now Angular, Vue. There are a lot of things happening, and lot of things are coming in front end world. So like how people like how the developer can focus on the things like which is best, or which is like best practice to follow. This is very confusing things, and we have to
Yeah, sure.
update up to date.
Yeah, so I mean, for a new developer, you should identify a company that you want to work at or a couple companies, find out what they're using, and get really good at whatever that is. That like it's hard, it is difficult to get into the world of software, and the last thing you want to do is become a specialist in something that nobody uses yet. So, with the limited time that you have to get a job, um, as productive as you will be with Remix, I still would say probably forego it unless the company you want to work at happens to use Remix. Now, I mean, if you want to play around with Remix, that's totally cool, and you want to build something with web tech, Remix is a great option. But as a new developer just getting into things, if you want to get a job, then you need to get really good at the things that people are using. Um, so then, but the other aspect of it, because you didn't just ask about beginners. So if you're an experienced engineer and you're trying to prioritize what you should be learning, first off, I'd say learn Remix and convince your boss to let you use it at work because you'll get way more done. But sans that, I guess um, the way that I stay on top of things is I just subscribe to a couple of newsletters from Cooper Press. So JavaScript Weekly, React Status, Node Weekly, HTML or Front End Focus. A couple of those newsletters. Also, UI.dev has some newsletters that they
Yeah,
do.
you're right.
They're pretty funny actually. But and then I listen to like Syntax FM actually is the only and Soft Skills Engineering are the only 2 technical podcasts I listen to anymore. And then, of course, mine, Chats with Kent and the Call Kent podcast. But yeah, anyway, um, so podcasts kind of help. Twitter helps a little bit, but Twitter can also be highly distracting from both like the time it takes out of your day, and also it gives you a false impression of what actually matters as well. So like use Twitter with care. Um, but yeah, the other important aspect to all of this, like that just gets you knowledgeable about what's going on. Then you have to decide what you're going to sink your time into, and that becomes a game of pick and choose, basically. So you have to like the nice thing about exposing yourself to what's possible is that when you actually go to build something, you've heard about the different solutions to problems that you're going to have while you're building that thing. And so real experience comes from experiences. And by building stuff, you get those experiences for yourself. And so there are some things that I've decided I'm just not going to um, bother following along with. Like when Elm came out and was getting kind of big, I decided, you know what, Elm seems cool, but I'm just not going to pay attention to it. When Vue came out, even I said Vue seems really cool, but I'm not going to get into it. I'm going to focus, and that focus has paid off really well for me. If I decided I wanted to go full on Vue, I think that would have paid off nicely too. So like, what matters, it matters less what you pick, and I mean, I probably wouldn't have had the success that I've had if I did choose Elm, because it's kind of not many people use that anymore. But so it does matter a little bit what you pick, but mostly what matters is what you focus on and just like having focus on something. Um, and I feel like there was something else. Oh, the other thing kind of ties into what I said earlier too. If you're unsure what to pick, then just pick the most popular one, because that's the safest bet. Yeah, you can take a bigger gamble, higher risk, high reward from like, can I get a job with this thing? But yeah, if you're unsure, then just pick the most popular one. Unless you can see that Apple can come out and say Flash doesn't exist anymore. Like don't pick the thing, don't pick that thing, that even if it's really popular, that like is clearly on a downward decline. Like another one, I guess I would say, this isn't the most popular option, but just as another example, Gatsby. If you look at the NPM downloads, it's decreasing in downloads per month. So it is on the way down. I would not jump on something that is on the way down from a popularity standpoint either. So anyway, those are a bunch of thoughts on that.
Cool. So when I was my old organization, we were using the Angular. Then my manager told me you should try the React. So then I tried the React. I learned it. Then I was a big fan of the React. Then I told to my manager, we will should follow the like React. And then now the remix come, and I tried it and I like it. So mostly in my new app we will try the remix in my
Yeah,
organization.
that's awesome. See, it's the experienced engineers, in particular on new projects, where you're going to get the most traction on the new stuff. So yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, and I'm doing the POC part, like how it will help us, or what is the best benefits we get from the remix. So I'm
Awesome.
trying, and how we will deploy in our organization and all things.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge for most people moving from static site generation or client-side rendering is, well, now we need a server. And most companies have a server for their backend stuff. Like those client-side apps don't typically interact with nothing on the backend. You have a server somewhere probably, and so you typically just host your Remix app where you're hosting that server. But yeah, anyway, it's cool.
Cool. So there is one question: is Remix be a good option for client side app? I think Remix is for only for the server side rendering. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, you can use Remix as like a build tool and build a client-side app with Remix. It is possible. Um, uh, my question would be, why do you want to build a client-side app? Is it like we should be more focused on the user experience that we want to offer? And so, like, is there a reason you want it to be client-side? The biggest reason I can think of that you might want it to be client-side is so you can do offline. And so, like, you stick everything in a service worker and stuff. That should be possible with Remix. I can't imagine why it wouldn't be. You wouldn't be able to take advantage of a lot of the features of Remix in doing that without quite a bit of extra work. Basically, a service worker that intercepts all the requests that Remix makes and stuff. I'd love to see it. Somebody build something like that. I'm pretty confident that would be possible. Um, but eventually, Remix will support running in a service worker, the entire thing. And so then it could be a completely client-side app that, it's not a super great experience, again, because you have to download all of the JavaScript to start doing anything. But the experience would be like this on the right, even still. You just have to wait longer because you're downloading JavaScript to get that all into the service worker before it can start making any requests to backend APIs and stuff. But anyway, that's like the biggest reason I can see somebody wants to do client-side app. The other one, of course, is we don't want to like host a server or anything. You could still like make that work. You could there are tools that will let you point to a URL and download that site as static assets, and then you could put those onto a CDN. So you could have a build step for static site generation with Remix. Again, it's not a good user experience, but there are reasons for it, maybe. And so if that's really what you have to do, you can still use Remix and get its sweet 200 millisecond build times. So yeah, but again, like we're modern infrastructure makes it pretty easy. Like not, I wouldn't say as easy, but almost as easy as modern CDN infrastructure, to do like a dynamic thing. And so I would say put in the tiny bit of extra effort for a much better user experience.
Cool. I think you have given a very detailed explanation about this related to the client side. They can use it if they want. Cool. I think we are done. And do you have any last word uh, for the students or for the developer, experienced developer?
Um, not, yeah, actually I do. So at the start of this, I started giving my typical remix spiel, and there's a lot more to it. And so if you go to my website, kinseydods.com/talks, and go down to building excellent user experiences with Remix, all of these video links will take you to like the full thing. So you can choose which one you prefer. And yeah, you can go through the whole thing, and that would give you a better idea of what Remix has to offer. Because like we didn't get to talk about nested routing. There's also um, uh, being able to do really cool things because we do have JavaScript in the browser, and we're your bundler and your compiler, and so we can prefetch things, make everything like we basically are getting rid of all loading states even after the app is loaded. Mutations are built in. What is the word I'm looking for? Like revalidations and race conditions are not a thing. You don't need to think about those things when you're using Remix. Error states are really awesome. All of that stuff I talk about in those other talks. So go give those a look. And other than that, thank you for having me this morning or evening, wherever you are.
Yeah, it's too late for India. It's 10:30 p.m. in India.
Yeah, fun. Thanks for
Cool.
staying up.
Yeah, and for that, like I'm also making the remix video, but it's in my native language so that people can
Awesome.
easily understand. And yeah,
Yeah,
so
I
every
really
week I will
appreciate
make.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Go
no
ahead.
no amount of work that us, the Remix team, will do, will be able to do what you can. So we really appreciate you doing that. That's awesome.
Cool. Thanks for that. Every weekend, every weekend when I get the time, then I record the video and then add in the YouTube. So people
That's
just,
awesome.
but it's in the native language because why I choose the native language so that people like in my India, people maybe don't understand English or so that they can easily understand my native language. So that's why I try to help them.
That is great. Yeah, thank you for doing that.
Cool. Yeah. So thanks all. Anybody have any last question? Yeah, thanks a lot for Kent your time, and yeah, in future maybe we will do more live stream if we get the time.
Sounds great.
Cool. Thanks a lot for your
Oh,
time.
actually,
Yeah,
do you wanna push your meetup? Here, actually, I'll share my screen and I'll just
yeah,
go to
yeah,
the
yeah,
meetup.
yeah,
So
yeah,
folks who don't know, um, if you go to, am I sharing? Yeah, there we go.
yeah,
If you go to remixas/meetup, then this is our meetup groups. We've got a group in Austin that just started now. So we've got a bunch of groups, and one in India that is the online Remix India Online. So go join this because it's awesome. And yeah, your next meetup is already scheduled.
yeah.
So
It's
yeah, going to talk about serverless and stuff. That's cool.
and two people
So
we will join. And there is one talk is how serverless saved money on my heating bill. And I even talk read his blog and he's explaining in details how he used the remix and all.
yeah, it'll be sweet. So definitely go subscribe or join the Remix India online group. Okay, that's all.
Thanks a lot, Kent, for your time. Yeah. So good night, good morning to you.
Yeah, good night to you. Thanks,
Okay.
everybody.
Thanks all. Bye.